as long as humans have walked the earth, we've asked the same haunting question: where did we come from? Not merely as a species, but as thinking beings capable of curiosity, memory, imagination, and meaning. Science and archaeology don't just answer this question with fossils and timelines. They reveal a deeper story, one about survival, creativity, cooperation, and the fragile chain of events that eventually produced us. Today, we'll follow that chain. From the first spark of life to the rise of early humans, and the moment our ancestors looked at the world and realized they were part of something larger. This is the scientific story of human origins, told not as a lesson, but as a journey we can still feel in our bones. Life on Earth began humbly, far more humble than we usually imagine, not with animals, not with plants, but with single-celled organisms drifting in ancient oceans. For billions of years, the planet belonged to these tiny pioneers. But something remarkable happened. Life grew more complex. Cells learned to cooperate, to specialize, to form bodies. It wasn't intelligence that drove this transformation, but survival, and the quiet pressure of evolution shaping life molecule by molecule. Every living creature today, including us, carries the memory of those ancient transformations, not in stories, but in our DNA. Over time, life developed structure. Backbones formed, limbs emerged, creatures crawled from water to land, claiming new territory and new opportunities. Among them were the early mammals, small, cautious, and overshadowed by giants. They survived not through strength, but adaptability. Sharp senses, warm bodies, and flexible behavior allowed them to endure the changing world. These traits would one day shape human evolution, but our ancestors were still millions of years away from taking center stage. Around 60 million years ago, in dense forests filled with branches and shadows, primates emerged. They were agile, curious, and social, traits that would later define us. Their world demanded precision, eyes that could judge distance, hands that could grasp, brains that could remember the paths of trees and the rhythms of seasons. These adaptations weren't steps toward becoming human. They were simply ways to survive. But they accidentally created the foundation of our future intelligence. Around 7 million years ago, something subtle yet extraordinary happened in Africa. A branch of primates began walking a slightly different evolutionary path, one that would eventually lead to us. The earth was changing, forests were shrinking, grasslands were spreading, and certain primates began spending more time on the ground, adapting to new challenges and new dangers. Scientists call these early ancestors hominins. They were not humans, but they were no longer fully ape-like either. They stood on the threshold of a new way of living, one shaped by endurance, exploration, and the slow sharpening of the mind. This was the first quiet step toward humanity, not a dramatic leap, but a gradual shift, barely noticeable at the time, yet monumental in its consequences. About 4 million years ago, the world witnessed the rise of Australopithecus, one of the most famous early hominins. They walked upright with surprising confidence, using their free hands to gather food, carry tools, and interact with their surroundings. Their lives were simple yet demanding. They navigated shifting landscapes, watched for predators, and used their growing intelligence to make sense of the world around them. Australopithecus didn't make fire. They didn't carve stone. But they did something just as important. They showed that walking upright was not a mistake. It was a successful evolutionary strategy that opened doors future generations would walk through. 2.5 million years ago, a quiet revolution began. Some early hominins, likely Homo habilis, picked up stones not just to hold them, but to shape them. They chipped edges, sharpened surfaces, created the first intentionally crafted tools. These tools changed everything. They expanded diets, opened new survival strategies, and signaled the awakening of a new kind of intelligence, one capable of imagining something that does not yet exist, then making it real. With a stone tool, early humans reshaped the world, and in doing so, they reshaped themselves. Fire was not just a discovery, it was a turning point. When early humans learned to control flames, they gained more than warmth or cooked food. They gained time. Time to think, to socialize, to plan. Firelight extended the day into the night, transforming human interaction. Some scientists believe fire altered our physiology, enabling the growth of larger brains. Others see it as the spark that ignited human culture itself. Either way, fire did something unique. It brought humans together, around light, around heat, around stories. Homo erectus was one of the most successful human species ever to exist. Strong, resourceful, and endlessly curious, they became the first humans to leave Africa. They spread across Asia, the Middle East, and eventually parts of Europe. Wherever they went, they adapted, not through force, but through endurance and cooperation. Their long legs and efficient bodies allowed them to walk vast distances. Their minds were sharp enough to plan journeys and exploit new landscapes. In many ways, Homo erectus embodied the spirit of humanity long before modern humans appeared. A desire to explore, to adapt, and to keep moving forward. Neanderthals were not the brutish caricatures we once imagined. Archaeology has revealed them as intelligent, capable, and deeply emotional beings. They made tools with precision, created symbolic objects, lived in structured social groups, and adapted to the harsh climates of Ice Age Europe. For thousands of years, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens coexisted, sometimes competing, sometimes sharing the same landscapes. They were not failed humans. They were a different expression of humanity, one that left a permanent imprint on our genes and our understanding of what it means to be human. When Homo sapiens finally emerged around 300,000 years ago, they were not the strongest species, nor the fastest, but they were the most adaptable. Their minds could imagine possibilities, create symbols, and build complex social networks. They used memory to learn from the past and imagination to shape the future. Their greatest gift was not strength, it was connection. They cooperated in large groups, shared knowledge, and passed wisdom across generations. This ability to collaborate transformed them from ordinary primates into global shapers of the earth. The story of human origins is not just a timeline of bones and artifacts. It is a reminder of how unlikely we are, how many twists and turns, how many fragile moments led to our existence. We are the descendants of survivors, of wanderers, of thinkers, of beings who looked at an uncertain world and decided to adapt rather than give up. Our past is not a distant memory. It lives in our bodies, in our instincts, and in the way we search for meaning. Understanding where we come from is not about looking backward. It is about grounding ourselves so we can look forward with clarity, humility, and awe.